I'm Vanessa Powell, 38, founder and CEO of Nexus Technologies. After years of grinding to build my company from the ground up, I looked forward to attending my brother Scott's wedding, not just for family, but in the hope that it might be the start of healing old wounds. I didn't expect the wedding to turn into a showdown sparked by a $30 million deal and a seating chart that spoke volumes. Ever been treated like you're invisible by your own family? Let me show you how I reminded them exactly who I am. Before I dive into this story, drop your location in the comments. I want to know where you're tuning in from. Like, subscribe, and stick around for stories about speaking up when it matters most. Let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in Westfield, Connecticut, with my brother Scott. We were close as kids, just 2 years apart, spending summers building forts and winters racing sleds down Maple Hill. Our mother, Judith, packed us identical lunches. Our father, Robert, taught us to fish during our annual trips to Lake Champlain. It was warm, safe, simple. But everything changed in high school. Scott joined the football team like Dad had. I fell in love with coding and joined the debate team. Our parents never missed a game of Scott's, but when it came to my competitions or science fairs, they were often late, if they showed up at all. Business and sports build character, my father used to say, clapping Scott on the back. That computer stuff? Just a hobby. You'll grow out of it. I didn't. I earned a scholarship to MIT. Scott scraped through a business degree at our father's alma mater, backed by a partial athletic scholarship. At family dinners, they gush about Scott's football stats and fraternity stories. My academic wins? Nods. Maybe, before someone changed the subject. After college, I dove into Boston startup world, 80-hour weeks, no vacations, barely scraping by. Scott, meanwhile, walked into Powell Construction, the family business, and was handed a management title his GPA didn't earn. It's not just about grades, my mother said over dinner once. Scott understands the real world. At 28, I bet everything on myself. I emptied my savings, took out a loan, and launched Nexus Technologies. I worked out of my tiny apartment, living on ramen, sleeping on a pull-out couch, pouring every ounce of myself into the company. My parents didn't ask to invest. They didn't ask about my plans. Their advice: come work for the family company when this blows over. Then Nexus hit gold. Our supply chain software turned heads, big ones. Within months, we landed major clients, hired staff, moved into a real office. And then came our biggest break. Bradford Enterprises, a commercial real estate giant, needed a digital solution. Their operations director, Eleanor Wright, discovered Nexus at an industry conference. She had no idea who I was beyond the tech. After months of audits and negotiations, they signed a $30 million deal, our largest ever. When I shared the news with my parents, I hoped they'd finally see me. That's nice, dear, my mother said. Did you get the invite to Scott and Tiffany's engagement party? It's at the Bradford estate. He's got his own golf course. So, I met Richard Bradford, Tiffany's father, at that party. He was tall, silver-haired, and oozed power. So you're the mind behind Nexus, he said. Your software is going to save us millions. Thank you, Mr. Bradford. We're excited about the partnership. Please call me Richard. My mother appeared at my side, startled. You two have met? Yes, I said. Richard was just complimenting our software. Your software? He asked. Wait, Powell, you're Scott's sister? He never mentioned that, Richard added, surprised. My mother laughed nervously. Oh, Vanessa's always been our little computer genius. Scott's more the builder, like his father. Richard nodded, polite but puzzled. It wasn't an oversight. Scott had purposely left me, and my company, out of his version of our family's success story. But I still held out hope. Maybe at the wedding, things would change. I picked the perfect dress, a tailored navy piece that blended elegance and authority. I brought Marcus Chun, a venture capitalist I had been seeing for 3 months. Are you sure? He asked. Sounds like it could get tense. That's exactly why I need you there, I said. You see me. The night before the wedding, I called Scott. Hey, I said. Just wanted to say I'm happy for you. Looking forward to tomorrow. Thanks, he replied, distracted. It's been crazy here. Tiffany's in full planner mode. Richard keeps adding people. Anything I can do to help? Nah. Just about the seating. Had to make some last-minute changes, but it's all handled. I had a sinking feeling. But I let it go. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow I would be seen. The Bradford estate was sprawling. 30 acres of ocean view opulence. Guests in tuxedos and gowns sipped champagne by a fountain. The air smelled like salt and orchids. My mother approached, dressed in pale pink. "You're here. And who is this?" "Mom, this is Marcus Chen." He offered his hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Powell." She nodded politely before pivoting. "Vanessa, your father is by the bar with Richard and the investors. You should say hello." She didn't wait for a reply. "Nice woman," Marcus whispered. "Wait for it," I murmured. My father gave me a quick hug. "There's my girl." "And who's this young man?" I introduced Marcus again. Then Richard greeted me with genuine warmth. "Vanessa, I was just telling these guys how your software is transforming our logistics. We're seeing results already." One investor nodded. "You're the one behind Nexus?" Bradford can't stop talking about it. Before I could reply, my father chimed in. "Vanessa always had a knack for computers. Scott's the one who introduced her to Richard, didn't you know? Always looking out for his little sister." It was a bald-faced lie. Richard caught it. His brow lifted slightly, but he said nothing. I opened my mouth to correct him. And that's when Tiffany arrived in a cloud of white silk and diamonds. "Vanessa, you came," she said brightly, kissing both my cheeks. I smiled. Of course. Wouldn't miss it. But deep down, I knew something else. They still didn't see me. That was about to change. Navy blue, how practical. Tiffany's eyes skimmed over my dress with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Though I could have sworn I mentioned the family would be wearing pastels for the photos. "You didn't," I replied evenly. "But congratulations, Tiffany. Everything looks beautiful." She beamed, linking her arm through Richard's. "Daddy spared no expense. Scott's with the groomsmen. The ceremony starts in 30. And who might this be?" Her gaze had landed on Marcus, and for the first time all day, her warmth seemed almost sincere. After introductions, she lit up like a chandelier. "Marcus Chen of Horizon Ventures. Daddy's mentioned your firm. You must join us at the family table for the reception." Marcus placed a hand gently on the small of my back. "Thank you, but I'll be sitting with Vanessa." Tiffany's smile stiffened. Of course. Speaking of which, I should check with the planner about final seating. So many last-minute changes. As she glided away, Marcus leaned down and murmured, "Is it me, or did the temperature just drop 20 degrees? The ceremony was lavish. Celebrity officiant, a renowned string quartet, vows that sounded like they were ghost-ridden by a PR team. Scott looked handsome but stiff, his eyes rarely meeting Tiffany's. Afterward, guests were directed to a sprawling tent on the lawn, lit by crystal chandeliers and filled with round tables draped in ivory linen and crowned with towering centerpieces. "Let's find our seats," I said, scanning for a chart. A harried wedding planner with a tablet greeted us at the entrance. "Vanessa Powell," I offered. +1. She frowned, scrolling. "Powell, Let me check another list." A chill crept up my spine. "Ah, here we are." "Oh," she said finally. Her professional tone slipped, revealing something like pity. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked. "Not at all. Just a moment, please." She hurried off. 5 awkward minutes passed before she returned, now accompanied by an older woman in a crisp black suit. "I'm the catering manager," the woman said softly. "It appears there's been a mix-up with the seating arrangements. The main reception tables are at capacity." "I RSVP'd 2 months ago," I replied, my voice tight. "I'm the groom's sister." "Yes, of course. We've made alternative arrangements for you and your guest." "Alternative?" Marcus repeated, eyes narrowing. "If you'll follow me." We trailed her away from the laughter and light, down a quiet hallway. With every step, the sound of the celebration faded. She opened a door to the kitchen, where servers bustled in organized chaos. In the corner sat a small table, hastily set with a white tablecloth. "You can't be serious," I said, heat rising to my face. "I do apologize," she said, avoiding my eyes. The bride made some last-minute changes to accommodate business associates. "I am a business associate," I said sharply. "Bradford Enterprises just signed a $30 million contract with my company." The catering manager blinked. I wasn't informed. I'm just following orders. Before I could respond, Tiffany appeared, a champagne flute in hand, eyes sparkling with satisfaction. Is there a problem? She asked sweetly. Yes, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You've seated me and my guest in the kitchen. I'm your husband's sister. She took a slow sip. We had to prioritize. Daddy's associates and close friends needed premium tables. I'm sure you understand. Actually, I don't, I said coldly. And I doubt Scott would be pleased to know his sister's been relegated to the staff quarters. Tiffany's smile vanished. Scott reviewed the seating this morning. He knows exactly where everyone is. It hit like a punch. Scott had agreed to this. My own brother had been complicit. This is completely inappropriate, Marcus said, his voice edged with steel. We'll be sitting with the other guests. For the first time, Tiffany dropped the mask. Her gaze turned sharp, voice like cut glass. The help eats in the kitchen, she said. You should feel right at home, given your humble beginnings. The catering manager blanched. The kitchen staff paused, pretending not to hear. And just like that, something inside me broke, then reformed. Stronger, clearer. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't stoop to her level. But I was done being invisible. Marcus, I said calmly, I need a moment. Could you wait for me outside? He squeezed my hand. Take all the time you need. Alone in the kitchen, I stood in the eye of a storm. My face burned, but my spine was straight. I'd built a company from nothing. Closed deals no one thought I could. And now, the people benefiting from my work had decided I wasn't good enough to sit at their table. I knew what I had to do. The women's restroom near the hallway was blissfully empty. I locked a stall and leaned against the door as silent tears escaped. Humiliation, rage, resignation. It all came tumbling out. How had I convinced myself that this time would be different? I thought of my 16th birthday, forgotten, because Scott had a football championship that weekend. A melted grocery store cake showed up 3 days later. My MIT graduation, valedictorian. My parents arrived late, missing my speech because Scott's fraternity held an alumni brunch. They brought him to my dinner, where he dominated the conversation. The day I signed the lease on Nexus's first real office, I called home elated. They cut me off. They were hosting a barbecue to celebrate Scott's promotion to VP, a title created just for him. And today, hidden in the kitchen, like a stain they hoped no one would notice, a gentle knock broke my spiral. Vanessa? It's Marcus. You okay? I wiped my eyes, took a breath, and unlocked the door. He stood there, holding 2 champagne flutes. His face softened when he saw me. I thought you might need this, he said gently. I took the glass and sipped, letting the crisp chill ground me. No more hiding, I said, steady now. Let's go make an appearance. I'm sorry you're witnessing this level of family dysfunction, I murmured, leaning against the kitchen wall beside Marcus. He shook his head. Don't be. Honestly, it's been enlightening. I see what you've dealt with your whole life. And still you showed up today. Hoping for what? Acceptance? Recognition? I looked down at my champagne. Maybe just basic respect. Those aren't unreasonable things to want, Vanessa. I nodded slowly, but I'm realizing something. I don't actually need their approval anymore. I built Nexus without their help. My team respects me. My clients value what I've created. My friends know who I really am. I glanced at him. You know. He smiled. I certainly do. He reached for my hand. So what do you want to do? We can leave now. Grab dinner. See a movie. Pretend this wedding disaster never happened. My clutch buzzed. I pulled out my phone. Eleanor Wright, Bradford Enterprises Operations Director. I should take this, I said, straightening. Marcus nodded, stepping aside. Vanessa? Just confirming our meeting next week about Phase 2. Also, payment for the first phase posted this morning. $30 million. Right on time. As she dove into technical updates, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just a contract. It was power, my power. I had built something real. Something even Richard Bradford couldn't diminish. Thanks, Eleanor, I said. Can I call you back in 20? I'm actually at the Bradford Powell wedding. Oh, I didn't realize you were attending. Of course. Enjoy the celebration. When I hung up, Marcus was watching me closely. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I took a deep breath. That I've spent my whole life waiting for them to see my worth. But maybe it's time I did, and acted accordingly. What does that mean exactly? I wiped the last trace of mascara from under my eyes and checked my reflection. It means I'm not hiding back here like I'm ashamed of who I am. I'm walking back into that reception. Head high. Marcus tilted his head. And the Bradford contract? Getting cancelled. His brows shot up. You're sure? 30 million's no small hit. We've diversified. It'll sting, but it won't break us. And the message it sends, that's worth more than the money. He grinned. Then I'm with you. We headed back to the reception. The jazz band played, servers drifted with champagne flutes, and chandeliers sparkled like nothing had happened. But everything had. I scanned until I spotted the head table. Richard Bradford, Scott, Tiffany, a cluster of suited men. They're negotiating, Marcus murmured. I recognized Thomas Harrington from Coastal. This merger must be bigger than they let on. Perfect, I said, lifting my chin. Let's make sure they know exactly who they sent to the kitchen. We crossed the room, nodding politely to guests offering compliments about the beautiful wedding. I barely heard them. At the head table, Richard was mid-pitch. With Powell Construction's residential arm and our commercial portfolio, we project a 20% boost in efficiency, thanks to our new software. The software I built. He stopped talking when he saw me. Surprise flickered into discomfort. Vanessa, he said. We were just discussing business. Software implementation might interest you. I smiled coolly. I'm sure it would, especially since you're talking about my software. The system your company just paid $30 million for. Scott's smile faltered. Then maybe we could talk later. We're in the middle of something. Oh, I see. Using your wedding reception for business deals while your own sister eats with the catering staff. Very efficient. The air around the table went still. There was a misunderstanding with the seating, Tiffany said quickly. These things happen. Do they? Funny how the misunderstanding resulted in the CEO of your software provider sitting in the kitchen. Richard frowned. 30 million? What are you talking about? Your company signed a contract with Nexus Technologies. I'm the CEO. The software you're boasting about, that's my creation. His eyes widened. He turned to Scott. You never mentioned this. Scott shifted in his seat. It didn't seem relevant at the time. Not relevant, I repeated. You didn't think it mattered that the woman sitting in the kitchen built the very platform you're using to secure this merger? This isn't the time, Tiffany hissed. You're making a scene at our wedding. I reached calmly into my clutch. You're right. This isn't a scene. It's a business decision. I dialed. Gregory, it's Vanessa Powell. Cancel the Bradford contract. Effective immediately. Gasps. Scott turned white. Richard stood, rattled. Vanessa, you can't. I held up one finger. Yes. I understand the implications. No, this isn't a negotiation. I'll sign everything Monday. Tiffany's face contorted. You can't do that. We've already implemented your system across everything. I can, I said, ending the call. Nexus doesn't work with companies that treat partners like afterthoughts. Richard sputtered. This is absurd. Over a seating arrangement. No. Over what the arrangement revealed. Your values. If this is how you treat a CEO when you think she's just someone's sister, I'm not trusting you in a crisis. Several businessmen around the table exchanged looks, recalculating everything. Richard rounded on Scott. Did you know? Scott swallowed. I knew she ran a tech company. I didn't realize it was that one. You're lying, I said quietly. Eleanor mentioned the family connection to you 3 weeks ago. Scott's expression gave him away before his mouth could. Richard stood livid. We need to talk. Now. He grabbed Scott's arm. Tiffany stood too, glaring. You're ruining everything, she hissed. No, I said evenly. You did that the moment you decided I wasn't good enough to sit with my family. They stormed off. Marcus placed a hand on my back. That, he whispered, was the cleanest takedown I've ever seen. For the first time all day, I smiled. Let's get real food. Somewhere I don't have to sit next to the oven. As we turned to leave, Thomas Harrington approached. Miss Powell, Thomas Harrington, Coastal Development. I'd love to talk about what Nexus offers. Another man stepped up. Gerald Winters, Apex Investments. Been following your growth. Can we schedule a meeting? The very men Richard had tried to impress were now looking at me. I nodded. My assistant will follow up. But tonight I have plans. As Marcus and I left the tent, raised voices echoed from the other direction. The perfect wedding was unraveling, not because of me, but because of them. At the valet, my phone rang again. I didn't check it. The valet pulled up my Tesla. Nice ride, he said, impressed. Thanks, I replied, handing him a generous tip. Amazing what you can afford when you build your own company instead of riding on family names. Marcus laughed as he slid into the passenger seat. Feeling a little petty? Maybe a touch, I admitted, starting the car. I think I've earned it. And with that, we drove off, not away from something, but toward everything I finally knew I deserved. She deserved better. That much was clear the moment my father's gaze settled coldly on Marcus. And who exactly are you? He asked, his voice sharp. To tell me how my daughter should be treated? Dad, this is Marcus Chin. He's with me, and he's right, I said, standing straighter. This isn't about pride. It's about respect. Something I haven't received from this family in a very long time. Respect. His voice rose. You want to talk about respect after canceling a contract with your brother's father-in-law? Do you realize what you've done to Scott's future? Richard was going to make him a partner on their next development project. There it was. Not about me. Not about the wedding. Just business. Just Scott's next step up the golden ladder he was handed, while I built my own rung by rung. I'm sorry if this hurts Scott's prospects, I replied, though I wasn't. But I have to protect my company and my name. Bradford Enterprises doesn't get to treat me like a second-class citizen while profiting from my technology. You need to fix this, my father barked. Call them. Say it was a misunderstanding. That you were emotional because of the wedding. No, I said, voice steady. The decision stands. If anything, this conversation proves I made the right one. My mother appeared behind him, her makeup smudged, voice trembling. Vanessa, please. Scott is devastated. Can't you see what you're doing to this family? What I'm doing? I let out a humorless laugh. I've been dismissed and overlooked my entire life. I built a successful company from the ground up with no support from any of you. And now that I stand up for myself, I'm the one tearing this family apart. That's not fair, she said weakly. We've always been proud of you. Really? Then name one time you bragged about my achievements the way you do Scott's. One time you introduced me to someone important with the same pride you just showed over his ties to the Bradfords. Silence. That was answer enough. Around us, guests lingered nearby, watching the drama unfold. I spotted Cousin Olivia, arms crossed, giving me a discreet thumbs up. I think we should continue this conversation later, I said, glancing at the crowd. When emotions aren't running so high. There's nothing more to discuss, my father said coldly. You've made your choice. Scott is family. Richard Bradford is now family. And you've chosen to oppose both. No, Dad. I chose to respect myself. That's a big difference. Before he could reply, Scott emerged from the house, face pale, tux rumpled. Tiffany and Richard Bradford followed close behind. Van, what the hell? Scott's voice cracked. Richard's pulling all his business from Powell Construction. Do you know what that'll do to Dad's company? That wasn't my intention, I said. But it's the result, he snapped. You couldn't just sit where you were told for one day. You had to turn this into some grandstand for your tech company. Marcus sat beside me silently, but I touched his arm. This was mine to handle. My stupid tech company is valued at over $200 million. It employs 65 people. And until an hour ago, it was providing essential services to Bradford Enterprises. I didn't make a grandstand. I made a business decision. Based on how I was treated. Fix it, Scott demanded. Tell them it was a mistake. It wasn't, I said calmly. And I won't pretend it was just to save your business deal. Tiffany shoved past him, her perfect bridal image unraveling. This is all your fault, she screeched. You ruined my wedding over a chair. That's enough. Richard Bradford's voice was firm and final. He approached the car slowly, gaze unreadable. Miss Powell, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. There hasn't, I said. Your daughter made it perfectly clear where she thought I belonged. He looked at Tiffany, whose face colored with embarrassment. "Still," he said, tone diplomatic, "we should discuss this privately. The contract is significant. Ending it will affect both our companies." "I understand the consequences," I said, "and the decision stands." His composure slipped. "You're walking away from $30 million over a seating chart?" "I'm walking away from being disrespected. The money is secondary." Something flickered across his face. Was it admiration? It vanished quickly. "My legal team will contact yours. We'll be ready. I want a smooth transition. No disruption to your operations." Tiffany sputtered. "You're just going to let her? She's jealous of Scott and me." Richard turned sharply. "Tiffany, enough. Go tend to the guests. We'll talk later." She stormed off. My parents followed. Richard lingered. "For what it's worth, I didn't know about the seating. Had I known, I would have stepped in." "Thank you," I said, "but it doesn't change my decision." He nodded. "I disagree with it, but I respect your principles." He offered his hand. "Good day, Miss Powell." I shook it, then drove off. Scott stood in the driveway, stunned. "That was intense," Marcus murmured as we turned onto the main road. "Are you okay?" I exhaled slowly. Honestly, better than I've felt in years. Like I dropped a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying. The weight of trying to win their approval. Exactly. I looked in the rearview mirror at the shrinking estate. I spent so long proving myself to people who never saw my value. Today, I finally saw it myself. "So what now?" Marcus asked. "Besides finding a restaurant with proper seating arrangements." I laughed genuinely. "Now we rebuild. Nexus will be fine. We have other clients, other opportunities. And I have something I never really had before." "What's that?" "Self-respect," I said. "And it turns out, that's worth a lot more than $30 million. Monday morning, Nexus Technologies. The first email came at 6:43 a.m. By 8 o'clock, my inbox held 17 messages from Bradford executives, ranging from apologetic to borderline desperate. Eleanor Wright had sent 3. Richard Bradford had already called. "Morning, Sarah," I said, passing my assistant's desk. "I assume you've seen the email flood?" She nodded. "It's been nonstop. Eleanor called twice. And Mr. Bradford just asked when you'd be available. Schedule Eleanor for 10. Tell Richard I'm in meetings all day. Tomorrow afternoon." Sarah blinked. "He said it was urgent." "I'm sure it is," I said. "But I need to prep the transition plan with my team first." At my desk, Gregory Phillips, our COO, leaned against the doorframe. "So," he said, "want to explain what went down at your brother's wedding that ended our biggest contract?" "Close the door. It's a long story." I told him. The kitchen, the table, the confrontation, the contract termination. When I finished, he sat back in silence. "I'd love to say I'm surprised," he said, "but with your family, unfortunately it tracks. We need to replace the revenue," I said, switching to business mode. The Bradford contract was 22% of projected annual income. "I'm already on it," Gregory replied. "Westfield Partners is still on the fence. With a little incentive, I think we can lock them in. Do it, and accelerate the European expansion. We've freed up resources now." Sarah buzzed in again. "Vanessa, Thomas Harrington from Coastal Development is on line 1. Says it's about a potential contract." I looked at Gregory, surprised. "From the wedding?" He stood. "Want me to give you privacy?" "Stay. I want your input." I hit speaker. "Mr. Harrington, this is Vanessa Powell." "Miss Powell, thank you for taking my call. I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" After our brief encounter at the wedding, I looked into Nexus. "I'm impressed. I think Coastal Development could benefit from your supply chain system." I kept my tone professional. "We'd be happy to arrange a demo." "Excellent. One more thing. We've been considering a partnership with Bradford Enterprises. But after Saturday, I'm not sure they fit our culture." Gregory's eyebrows shot up. I had to suppress a smile. "Let's schedule a meeting," I said. And just like that, we were already moving forward. "I see," I said carefully. "Well, Mr. Harrington, while I can't speak to Bradford's corporate culture, I can assure you that at Nexus, we value professionalism and mutual respect in all our partnerships." That much was clear from how you handled a difficult situation, he replied. I'll have my assistant coordinate with yours for the demonstration. I'm looking forward to it, Miss Powell. After the call ended, Gregory let out a low whistle. Well, that was unexpected. What exactly happened at this wedding? I exhaled slowly. Let's just say it made an impression on a few important people. Then let's make sure our presentation for Coastal is flawless, I added. Their property portfolio surpasses Bradford's. By lunchtime, the news of the contract cancellation with Bradford Enterprises had spread through Nexus. While I hadn't disclosed the personal details, the leadership team understood that something major had occurred. To their credit, no one questioned my judgment. They focused on solutions. My 10 o'clock call with Eleanor Wright, Bradford's COO, had been tense but professional. She was upset about losing the system her team had spent months implementing, but her frustration seemed directed more at the situation than at me. For what it's worth, she said near the end of our call, I didn't know about the seating incident until Richard told me this morning. It was completely unprofessional. I'm sorry. I appreciate that, Eleanor. And I want you to know, this isn't a reflection on your team's work. You've been excellent partners throughout the process. Is there any way we could salvage this? Maybe with revised terms. I paused. I don't think so. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. But we'll support a smooth transition to whatever system you select next. At 3 o'clock, my personal cell rang. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, then answered on impulse. Vanessa Powell speaking. Vanessa, this is Diana Powell, your aunt. Your father's sister. I froze. Aunt Diana had been estranged from our family for nearly 2 decades. After a falling out with my father none of us kids ever fully understood. Aunt Diana, this is a surprise. How did you get my number? I have my ways, she said with a dry chuckle. And I've kept an eye on you. Your success with Nexus doesn't surprise me. You always were the sharp one. Thank you, I said slowly, still reeling. But why are you calling now? I heard what happened at Scott's wedding, she replied simply. Word travels fast in certain circles, and the Bradfords are nothing if not well connected. Oh, I wanted to tell you I'm proud of you, she said, for standing up for yourself and your company. It's about time someone broke that family pattern. What do you mean? Diana sighed, the sound carrying years of disappointment. Why do you think I haven't spoken to your father in 20 years? It's the same story, just a different generation. I built a successful interior design firm in the 80s, back when women weren't exactly welcome in construction. But our father, and then your father, dismissed my business as a cute hobby. They gave the family company to your dad, even though I'd worked there every summer since I was 16. The parallels hit hard. I had no idea, I said quietly. Dad never really explained why you disappeared. Of course not, she replied without resentment. It didn't fit the narrative. But what you did, walking away from Bradford, that matters. It breaks the cycle. We talked for an hour, filling in the blanks of our shared history. By the end, we'd made plans for dinner the following week. The reconnection felt inevitable. The surprises didn't end there. Later that afternoon, Gerald Winters of Apex Investments called, not just to discuss a potential contract for their supply chain, but to propose a strategic investment in Nexus. Your handling of the Bradford situation showed exactly the kind of principled leadership we invest in, he said. Sometimes, walking away from the wrong partnership is more valuable than securing the right one. By 5 o'clock, I'd instructed our legal team to finalize the termination paperwork. Simultaneously, we were evaluating 3 promising client leads that had come directly from contacts at the wedding. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I packed up to leave, my phone buzzed with a message from Scott, the first since the confrontation. Need to talk. Just you and me. Tomorrow lunch. I stared at the message. Despite everything, he was still my brother. Okay. 1 p.m. Luciano's on 5th. Just us. His reply came immediately. Thank you. That evening, as I cooked dinner, Marcus called to check in. So, he teased, has Bradford Enterprises imploded without your software yet? Not yet. I laughed. But Eleanor sounded close to panic this morning. I told him about the day's events, the calls, the reconnection with Aunt Diana, the investment offer, Scott's message. It's like by standing up for myself, I'd opened some portal to a world where people actually respect boundaries. Or, Marcus said gently, maybe this is just what life looks like when you stop accepting less than you deserve. His words lingered long after we ended the call. Just before midnight, I received an email from Richard Bradford, a formal request to discuss mutually beneficial resolution options. I flagged it for later. Whatever happened next would happen on my terms. 2 weeks later, I met Eleanor again, this time at Luciano's. The same place I'd met Scott. The transition to the new system isn't going well, Eleanor admitted, stirring her coffee. Richard regrets how everything unfolded. The replacement software's already 3 weeks behind, and the team can't replicate Nexus's features. I'm sorry to hear that, I said honestly. Your team put in good work. That's why I wanted to meet. Off the record, Richard won't admit it directly, but there's agreement among the executive team that letting Nexus go was a major mistake. I figured as much. What would it take for a complete reset? She asked. New contract, new terms, new points of contact. Richard's even willing to issue a formal apology for what happened at the wedding. And Scott? Tiffany? That's complicated. From what I hear, they're having some marital adjustments. Tiffany's been removed from any company involvement. Scott had hinted at this during our lunch. She was the one who changed the seating chart, he'd confessed, eyes downcast. She said your success made me look bad. I knew it was wrong. I didn't stop her. And that makes it better? I'd asked. No, he'd said quietly. It makes it worse. I've spent our whole lives trying to maintain this image, the successful Powell. And when you started to shine, I couldn't handle it. It was easier to minimize your success than admit you'd surpassed me. His honesty had surprised me. It wasn't a fix, but it was a start. Now, facing Eleanor, I paused. I need to think about it. Nexus is in a very different position than when we first signed with Bradford. I understand, she said, but I hope you'll consider it. Despite everything, our teams worked well together. As I left the restaurant, I didn't have an answer yet. But one thing was certain. I was no longer the one trying to prove I belonged at the table. I was the one deciding who got to sit there with me. That I promised Eleanor I'd give her an answer within the week, then walked her out to the street. We parted with a handshake, surprisingly warm, more genuine than any interaction I'd ever had with Bradford Enterprises before that infamous wedding. That evening, Marcus and I sat on my balcony, city lights stretching out before us, a bottle of wine between us. I told him about my meeting with Eleanor. So, he asked, are you actually considering it? Taking Bradford back as a client? I swirled the wine in my glass, thinking. Honestly, I don't know. Financially, it would be great for Nexus. But boundaries matter. And once you've drawn them, undoing them isn't something to take lightly. What does your team think? Gregory says we should consider it, but only with airtight contracts and a serious fee increase. Sarah thinks we should walk away and focus on the clients who came to us because we stood our ground. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. And what does Vanessa Powell think? The woman who finally stopped accepting less than she deserves. I smiled. I liked the way he framed that. She thinks the decision has to come from strength, not fear, not bitterness. If we re-engage with Bradford, it has to be because it truly serves Nexus's best interests, not because I'm chasing validation or afraid to say no. He raised his glass in a small toast. Now that sounds like the CEO I admire. The months since the wedding had been full of change. My reconnection with Aunt Diana had blossomed into something real, more than a family tie, a true friendship. Her experience as another Powell woman who carved out her own success in a male-dominated industry gave me perspective I hadn't known I needed. And her stories about my father's younger years helped me see him not just as the man he became, but as someone shaped by his own limitations. More unexpectedly, my parents had begun, tentatively, to reflect and reconsider. A few weeks after the wedding, my mother called. Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant. I've been thinking about what you said, she began. At the wedding. About us never celebrating your accomplishments like we did Scott's. I didn't want to believe it was true, but looking back, it was. And I'm sorry. It didn't undo decades of being overlooked. But it was a beginning, an acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, they hadn't really seen me until now. The most profound shifts, though, happened within me. That painful wedding moment, Being seated like an afterthought, sidelined by my own family, freed me from the exhausting chase for approval. I stopped measuring my success against Scott's achievements. I stopped letting my parents' limited perspective define my worth. With that clarity, everything changed. At Nexus, I made decisions with more confidence, no longer second-guessing myself. In my personal life, my relationship with Marcus deepened. I was finally showing up as myself, no filters. And most meaningfully, I launched a mentorship program for women in tech, especially those facing family or social barriers to success. I called it Visible. It wasn't just about business strategy. It was about self-worth, about maintaining boundaries in environments that try to erase them. Our first cohort of 20 women had already started meeting. Their stories echoed my own in ways that were both painful and healing. Helping them navigate their paths helped me find peace with mine. You know what still amazes me? I said to Marcus as twilight deepened around us. How one decision to stand up for myself created this ripple effect. It's still unfolding. That's how change works, he replied. Not in grand, dramatic moments. Just one choice, one boundary, and then everything shifts. Later that night, as we debated which restaurant to order from, a text came in from Scott. Dad wants to have dinner next week. Just the family. Says he has something important to talk about. Will you come? I showed it to Marcus. What do you think? I think, he said, you've earned the right to set the terms now. If you want to go, go. If you don't, don't. Either way, you'll be doing it from strength, not obligation. I typed slowly. I'll be there. But I'm bringing Marcus. He's important to me, and I want him there. Scott replied moments later. Of course. Mom and Dad will be glad to get to know him better. It wasn't perfect. The scars of old family dynamics didn't vanish overnight. The Bradford decision was still unresolved. Scott and Tiffany were navigating the cracks in their shiny new marriage. But for the first time, I felt like I was living on my terms, not theirs. Not anyone else's. I wasn't being boxed in by expectations or silenced by roles others had written for me. In the end, that whole story, the wedding seating chart, the canceled contract, was never really about either of those things. It was about claiming my worth, not by where they placed me, but by where I chose to stand. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who didn't see your value? Or walk away from a situation where you weren't being treated as you deserved? Share your experience in the comments. The hardest boundaries to set are often with the people closest to us. But those are also the ones that change everything. If this story resonated with you, like this video, subscribe for more content on standing in your power, and share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own worth today. You deserve a seat at the table. And if they can't see that, you have every right to walk away,